My name is Mira Thompson. I'm an architect, a single mother, and a woman who vanished into the night carrying a secret an entire powerful family wanted buried. 6 years ago, I walked away from a crumbling marriage, pregnant, terrified, and determined to protect a child his father didn't even know existed. I started over with nothing. No money, no home, just a fierce will to survive. And I built a life brick by brick. But the past never stays buried. And one day, it showed up at my door, demanding answers I could no longer avoid. Before I share the rest of my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever overcome something for your family, hit that like button and subscribe because trust me, you're going to want to hear what happens next. The Pike Place Market was alive with its usual Saturday chaos. Tourists haggling over salmon, street musicians competing for attention, and the smell of fresh coffee mixing with sea salt from Elliott Bay. I held Eli's hand tighter as we wove through the crowd, his small fingers sticky from the honey stick I'd bought him after art class. "Mom, look!" He pointed at a street artist sketching portraits. "Can we watch?" I was about to say yes when I saw him. David, my ex-husband, stood 20 feet away, examining fresh flowers at a vendor's stall. His hair was shorter now, touched with gray at the temples. The worn jeans and college sweatshirt I remembered had been replaced by a tailored coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent. CEO of a tech company now, I'd heard through mutual friends I no longer spoke to. I should have turned away, should have disappeared into the crowd before he noticed us. But my feet had grown roots, and in that moment of hesitation, he looked up. His eyes found mine first, widening with recognition. Then they dropped to Eli. The flowers in David's hand fell to the ground. His face went white, jaw slack. I watched him take in every detail of our son. The dark curls that matched his own childhood photos, the sharp jawline already hinting at the man he'd become, the way he stood with one hip cocked exactly like David did when he was thinking. Eli tugged on my hand. "Mom, that man dropped his flowers." David's mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear over the market noise. He took a step forward. I pulled Eli backward, my hand trembling against his. "We need to go, sweetheart." "But Mom—" "Now." I turned and walked away. Not quite running, but close. Behind us, I heard David call my name. Once. Twice. I didn't look back. Eli had to skip to keep up with my pace, and I forced myself to slow down, to breathe, to not traumatize my child with my panic. We reached our car, and I buckled Eli in with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. In the rearview mirror, I saw David emerge from the market entrance, scanning the parking lot. I ducked down, started the engine, and pulled out before he could spot us. "Who was that man?" Eli asked as we merged onto I-5. "Nobody, baby, just someone I used to know." He accepted this with 6-year-old simplicity, already distracted by a ferry crossing the Sound. But my knuckles were white on the steering wheel, my heart a trapped bird in my chest. 6 years. I'd kept this secret for 6 years. I'd built a life, careful and deliberate as a house of cards. We had routines, we had safety, we had peace. Eli had never asked about his father. Not really. There was no empty space in his life because I'd filled every corner with love, with stability, with enough joy that he didn't know to miss what he'd never had. But now David had seen him, seen the truth written in our son's face as clearly as if I'd sent him a birth announcement. That night, after Eli was asleep, I stood in his doorway watching him breathe. His face was soft in the glow of his dinosaur nightlight, one arm flung above his head, the other clutching the stuffed elephant he'd had since birth. Innocent, protected, mine. I thought about David's face in that moment of recognition. The shock, the devastation, the questions. He'd want answers. Of course he would. Any man would. But I'd learned long ago that what people want and what they deserve are two very different things. I'd learned that some secrets aren't kept out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Some silences aren't empty. They're full of all the words that would only bring harm. I closed Eli's door softly and went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine I wouldn't drink, sat at the table where we ate breakfast every morning, where Eli did his homework, where we'd built Lego castles and played board games and lived our small, perfect life. The wine grew warm in my hands as I stared at nothing. remembering. Some stories begin with once upon a time. Mine began with goodbye. No, that wasn't right either. Mine began the day I learned that love wasn't enough. That you could love someone with every cell in your body and still need to leave. That sometimes the bravest thing you could do was disappear. The city lights blurred through my kitchen window. Somewhere out there, David was probably pacing his expensive apartment, trying to make sense of what he'd seen. Tomorrow, he'd start looking for us. I knew him well enough to know that. The wind had changed direction. The secret I'd guarded so carefully had slipped through my fingers in a crowded market on a Saturday afternoon. And now I had to decide what came next. 6 years earlier, the sketches were spread across our dining room table like accusations. House plans we'd drawn together during late nights in our first apartment, fueled by cheap wine and dreams bigger than our budget. My fingers traced the pencil lines. A wraparound porch we'd never build, a studio with north-facing windows, a nursery tucked next to the master bedroom. "Those need to go." David's voice came from the doorway. He was knotting his tie, the expensive one his mother had bought him. "The lawyers are coming for dinner tomorrow." I kept my eyes on the drawings. "These are ours." "Were." He crossed to the coffee maker, his movement sharp and efficient. "Were ours. Things change, Mira. Things change." The motto of our marriage's slow death. It started when his father had the heart attack. David flew home to help with the family business, supposed to be temporary. 3 weeks became 3 months. When he finally came back, he wore suits that cost more than our rent and spoke in corporate buzzwords I didn't understand. "The Westfield Project," he'd say over dinner. "We're leveraging our core competencies to maximize stakeholder value." I'd nod and push food around my plate, wondering where the man who used to dream in blueprints had gone. His parents visited more often. His mother, Patricia, would tour our apartment with pursed lips, mentally redecorating. "When David takes over the Seattle branch," she'd say, "you'll need a proper home, somewhere suitable for entertaining." "I like our home," I'd reply. "Of course you do, dear." Her smile never reached her eyes. "But a Carter wife has certain responsibilities." Carter wife? Like I was a job title instead of a person. The pressure came in waves. First, subtle suggestions that I should quit my job at the architecture firm. "David makes more than enough," Patricia would say. "You could focus on charity work. The hospital foundation needs someone with your artistic eye." Then less subtle. David started missing my work events, forgetting to ask about my projects. When I landed the Richmond Library design, he'd nodded absently and asked if I'd remembered to RSVP to his company gala. But I could have handled all of that. Could have fought for us, for the couple who used to stay up until 3 a.m. designing impossible houses and believing in beautiful futures. I would have fought. Until the night I decided to surprise him at the office. I'd made his favorite dinner, Thai food from the place we went on our first date. Thought we could eat together in his new corner office, maybe remember who we used to be. The security guard knew me, waved me through with a smile. The elevator rode up 30 floors while I balanced takeout bags and hope. His office door was cracked open, spilling warm light into the dark hallway. I heard voices, his and Jennifer's, the assistant with the MBA and the skirts that stopped mid-thigh. "You're so tense," she was saying. "Here, let me—" I pushed the door open. She was standing behind his chair, hands on his shoulders. His eyes were closed, head tilted back. The scene was intimate in a way that made my stomach drop, even though they were fully clothed. They jumped apart when they saw me. Jennifer smoothed her skirt. David stood too quickly, knocking papers off his desk. "Mira, what are you doing here?" I held up the takeout bags like evidence. "Dinner. I thought—" "I told you I was working late." "I can see that." Jennifer mumbled something about reports and fled. David and I stood on opposite sides of his massive desk, strangers in expensive clothes. "It's not what it looks like," he said. "What does it look like?" She was just, "We've been working on the merger. Long hours. Stress." I set the food on his desk. The smell of pad thai made me nauseous. "Do you remember what this is?" He glanced at the bags. "Thai food?" "Our first date. You said you'd never had Thai food. I said that was criminal. You laughed and said, 'Guess you'll have to rehabilitate me.'" Something flickered in his eyes. Memory? Maybe. Or guilt. "That was a long time ago," he said quietly. 2 years. Feels longer. And that was it, really. The moment I understood, we weren't growing apart. He was already gone. I was the only one still holding on to those sketches, those dreams, that couple who believed love could build a life. I left the food on his desk and walked out, drove home in silence, sat in our apartment, his apartment, really, his name on the lease, and looked at those house plans still spread on the table. When he came home after midnight, I was still sitting there. "We need to talk," he said. "No." I gathered the sketches carefully, rolling them like precious documents. "We really don't. Mira, please, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. The family expects—" "I know what your family expects." I stood, holding our paper dreams. "A Carter wife. Someone who hosts galas and serves on committees and doesn't mind when her husband works late with his assistant. That's not fair. You're right, it's not." I went to our bedroom, his bedroom, and packed a bag. Just essentials. I could come back for the rest later when he wasn't home, when I could be clinical about dividing a life into boxes. He followed me, talking about counseling, about trying again, about how Jennifer meant nothing. But I was already writing the note in my head, already gone. Because when you realize you're drowning, you don't negotiate with the water. You just swim for shore and hope you remember how to breathe. The test showed 2 pink lines. I sat on the bathroom floor of Lauren's guest room, back against the door, staring at that little plastic window like it might change its mind. My period was only a week late. Stress, I'd told myself. The divorce proceedings. The move. Starting over. But my body knew what my mind wouldn't accept. "Mira?" Lauren knocked softly. "You okay in there?" "Fine," I managed. Just give me a minute. A minute to process that my carefully executed escape plan had just exploded. That David, the man I'd walked away from 3 weeks ago, was still with me in the most permanent way possible. My phone buzzed. His lawyer. Again. The 15th call today. The divorce was supposed to be simple. No kids, no shared assets worth fighting over. I'd wanted nothing but my freedom. Clean break. New start. I touched my still flat stomach. So much for clean. The memory hit like a slap. David's voice, sharp with wine and fury during one of our last fights. "If you ever try to keep my children from me, I'll bury you. You know what my family can do, what our lawyers can do. Don't test me, Mira." He'd been hypothetically drunk, ranting about his cousin's custody battle. But I'd seen the cold certainty in his eyes. The Carter family didn't lose. They bought judges, buried opponents in legal fees, played dirty when cornered. I'd watched them destroy a business partner who'd crossed them, smiled at him over dinner while their lawyers stripped him of everything. My hands shook as I wrapped the test in toilet paper, shoved it deep in the trash. Lauren was a good friend, but this I couldn't share. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "I need to go home," I told her when I finally emerged. "Back to Portland. My mom's sick." The lie came so easily it scared me. But I was scared of so many things now. Lauren hugged me, promised to forward my mail, didn't question the suddenness. I threw my few belongings in my beat-up Honda and drove south, watching Seattle shrink in my rearview mirror. 10 hours later, I stood outside a women's clinic in Portland. Appointment card clutched in my sweaty palm. The protesters were out front with their signs and their judgment. I made it as far as the door before turning back. Not because of them, because of the memory of those house sketches, the nursery we'd drawn with such hope. Because even though David had become someone I didn't recognize, this baby was conceived when I still loved him, when we still had dreams. I canceled the appointment from my car, then drove to the cheapest motel I could find and cried until I threw up. Morning sickness or panic didn't matter. The next weeks blurred together. I waited tables at a diner that didn't ask for references, slept in my car when I couldn't afford the motel, threw up in restaurant bathrooms and smiled at customers who complained their eggs were too runny. My phone rang constantly. David, his lawyers, his mother. I changed my number, but they found the new one. Changed it again. Let it die when I couldn't afford the bill. "You look like hell," my manager Roy said one afternoon. I'd just finished a 12-hour shift and probably looked worse than hell. "Thanks." He slid a business card across the counter. "My sister runs a shelter for women in situations. Clean beds, hot meals, no questions." I wanted to protest that I wasn't in a situation. But my feet hurt, my back ached, and I'd eaten nothing but stolen toast in 2 days. The shelter was an old Victorian in southeast Portland, painted yellow like hope. Margaret, Roy's sister, took one look at me and guided me to a small room with a single bed and a window overlooking a garden. "Rest," she said. "Everything else can wait." I slept for 16 hours. When I woke, my hand went automatically to my stomach. Still flat, but not for long. In the morning light, the reality felt less like disaster and more like possibility. Terrifying possibility, but possibility nonetheless. "You running from someone?" Margaret asked over breakfast. The other women ate quietly, each carrying their own secrets. From a life that wasn't mine anymore. She nodded like that made perfect sense. "You got plans?" "No." "Good. Plans are overrated. You eat, you rest, you take each day as it comes. That's enough for now." But my mind wouldn't rest. Late at night, I'd lie in that narrow bed calculating. How long before I showed? How long before David's family tracked me down? How long could I hide? I thought about my architecture degree gathering dust, about the awards I'd won in school, the professors who'd said I had a gift, about how I'd traded all of that for a marriage that turned me into a ghost. "I won't let that happen to you," I whispered to my belly in the dark. "You'll know who you are. You'll know you're loved. That's all that matters." The other women in the shelter shared their stories in pieces. Sarah, whose husband broke her arm. Linda, whose boyfriend emptied her bank account. We were all refugees from lives that had tried to erase us. But here in this yellow house with its garden full of vegetables and hope, we were becoming solid again. Real. Present. I was 4 months along when Margaret offered me a job helping with shelter maintenance. 5 months when I enrolled in online architecture courses. 6 months when I felt the first flutter of movement, like butterfly wings against my ribs. "Hello, little one," I said, hand on my swollen belly. "It's just you and me, but we're going to be okay." Outside, Portland rain drummed against the windows. Inside, I was building a new life, one careful day at a time. The contractions started during my shift at the community center. I was teaching basic computer skills to a group of elderly residents when the first wave hit, sharp enough to make me grip the desk. "You all right, dear?" Mrs. Chen peered at me over her reading glasses. "Fine," I gasped, then immediately proved myself a liar by doubling over as another contraction rolled through me. Within minutes, I was in Margaret's ancient Volvo, breathing through pain while she ran red lights with surprising aggression for a woman who grew organic vegetables. "Still 3 weeks early?" I panted. "Babies don't read calendars," she said, taking a corner hard enough to make me grab the door handle. At the hospital, everything moved fast and slow simultaneously. Nurses checking monitors, doctors speaking in codes, pain that made the world narrow to just breath and heartbeat. "No epidural," I insisted when they offered. Not because I was brave, but because I was uninsured and had $247 in my bank account. "There are programs," the nurse said gently. "Financial assistance." But programs meant paperwork. Paperwork meant names and histories and trails that could be followed. I'd been so careful to stay invisible. "I'm fine," I lied, then screamed as another contraction hit. Hours blurred. Margaret held my hand, coached my breathing, didn't mention the probable fractures I was causing in her fingers. The pain became a living thing, and I rode it like a wave that might drown me. Then suddenly crying, not mine. "It's a boy," someone said. They placed him on my chest, this tiny, wrinkled, perfect person. He was covered in vernix and blood and looked absolutely furious about his eviction. His eyes, when he finally opened them, were the same dark blue as his father's. "Hello, Eli," I whispered. I'd chosen the name months ago. Eli, ascended, uplifted, my hope made flesh. He stopped crying when he heard my voice, his tiny fist closing around my finger with surprising strength. In that moment, the terror that had lived in my chest for 9 months dissolved. Not disappeared. I was still alone, still broke, still hiding. But it transformed into something else. Purpose. Fierce, protective purpose. "He's perfect," Margaret said, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Yeah," I agreed, memorizing every detail of his scrunched face. "He really is." The hospital discharged us after 24 hours. Policy for uninsured mothers. Margaret drove us home, not to the shelter, but to a small apartment above the community center. Director's residence, she explained, helping me up the stairs while I carried Eli. Hasn't been used in years. Board approved you for the position starting next month. Comes with housing. I stared at the space, tiny but clean, with windows overlooking a park. A crib sat in the corner, clearly second-hand but sturdy. The kitchen table held donated baby supplies. Margaret, I can't. Sure you can. You've been running the computer program for free anyway. Might as well get paid for it. I started crying then. Postpartum hormones, exhaustion, and the unexpected kindness of people who owed me nothing. Eli fussed at the sound, and I rocked him automatically, already learning his language. Those first weeks were a blur of feeding and diapers and walking zombie-like through days that blended into nights. Eli was a good baby, alert, curious, only crying when he needed something. But good babies still need constant care. And I was one person trying to be everything. Sleep when he sleeps, everyone advised. But when he slept, I studied. The online architecture courses I'd started during pregnancy became my lifeline to a future beyond survival. I'd prop my laptop next to his bassinet, designing theoretical buildings while he dozed, one hand on his back to feel him breathe. My first assignment came back with a note from the professor. Exceptional work. Your design shows real understanding of how space affects human behavior. Have you considered applying for our scholarship program? I had considered it, then dismissed it as impossible. But at 3 a.m., feeding Eli while Seattle rain drummed against our windows, impossible felt negotiable. I filled out the application one-handed, Eli cradled in my other arm. Wrote essays about architecture as social justice, about designing spaces that served vulnerable populations. Used my community center work as experience. Didn't mention the failed marriage or the secret baby or the fear that still woke me at night. We're going to have a life, I promised Eli as I hit submit. A real life. With walls I designed and doors that lock and windows that let in all the light you deserve. He gurgled, milk-drunk and content, trusting me completely. The acceptance letter came on his 3-month birthday. Full scholarship, plus a stipend for living expenses. I read it 4 times before believing it was real. Your baby brought you luck, Mrs. Chen said when I shared the news during computer class. No, I corrected, watching Eli sleep in his carrier beside my desk. He brought me courage. That night, I stood at our window holding Eli, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, David was living his life, unaware his son existed. Maybe with Jennifer now. Maybe with someone else his mother approved of. It didn't matter. I promise you, I whispered to Eli. You'll never doubt you're wanted. Never question if you're enough. I don't have much, baby boy, but you'll never run out of love. He yawned, tiny fist catching in my hair, and I knew I'd already kept the only promise that mattered. The scholarship covered tuition, but life had other costs. Diapers, formula when my milk dried up from stress, clothes Eli outgrew faster than I could buy them. I juggled 3 jobs, the community center, freelance drafting work, and weekend shifts at a coffee shop where the manager let me bring Eli in his carrier. You're going to burn out, Lauren warned during one of our rare phone calls. She'd tracked me down through the university, insisted on sending money I was too proud to accept. I'm fine, I said, bouncing Eli on my hip while trying to type one-handed. He was teething, cranky, and I had a structural engineering exam in 6 hours. Mira, I said I'm fine, but I wasn't. The coffee shop manager changed, and the new one didn't allow babies. The drafting clients wanted faster turnarounds. My grades started slipping, and with them, my scholarship standing. Rock bottom came on a Tuesday. I'd been up for 36 hours straight, Eli sick with an ear infection, me trying to finish a final project. I dozed off at my computer and woke to him screaming. His fever spiked to 103. The ER visit cost more than I made in a month. They treated him. Antibiotics, fever reducers, gentle hands that made me cry with relief. But the bill that followed might as well have been for $1 million. There are resources, the social worker said. Programs for single mothers. I have a job, 3 jobs, and you're still here at the free clinic. That tells me something. She slid a pamphlet across the desk. Support group for single mothers in graduate school. Wednesday nights, free childcare provided. Pride tastes bitter when you swallow it. But not as bitter as watching your baby suffer because you're too stubborn to ask for help. The group met in a church basement that smelled like coffee and grace. 6 women, various stages of exhausted, kids playing in the corner with volunteer watchers. I sat on the edge, ready to bolt. "I'm Sarah," said the woman running it. PhD candidate, 2 kids, divorced last year when my husband decided academia wasn't lucrative enough. "You?" Around the circle we went. Law students, med students, teachers getting master's degrees, all of us trying to build better lives for our kids while barely keeping our heads above water. "The only way through is together," Sarah said. "We trade off childcare, share textbooks, meal prep in bulk. Nobody succeeds alone." I cried through the entire first meeting. Not sad tears, relieved ones. I wasn't alone. These women understood the juggle, the exhaustion, the fierce determination to be more than statistics. The group saved me, literally. When Eli got sick again, Dr. Patricia, pediatric resident, checked him for free. When my laptop died, Jennifer, computer science, found me a refurbished one. When I had to present my senior project, 5 women showed up to watch Eli. "Single mothers are the strongest force in nature," Sarah said once. "We just forget sometimes." My senior project focused on transitional housing for women leaving domestic violence situations. I'd spent months interviewing survivors, understanding their needs, safe spaces, privacy, dignity, community. Everything I'd found at Margaret's shelter, built into architectural DNA. Professor Daniel Reeves oversaw my project. Late 40s, kind eyes, never wore matching socks. He pushed me harder than any instructor I'd had. "This is good," he'd say, reviewing my designs. "But good isn't enough. These women deserve exceptional." So I made it exceptional. Worked until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. Eli would play at my feet, building block towers, while I built theoretical sanctuaries. "Your mother named you well," Daniel said one evening, watching Eli stack blocks with intense concentration. He does seem uplifted. It was the first time anyone had understood the name's meaning without explanation. I looked at Daniel, really looked. Saw the way he watched Eli with gentle interest, not judgment. The way he never asked about Eli's father, just accepted us as we were. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" he asked, without the blueprints. "I have a son," I said, as if he hadn't noticed the toddler currently eating graham crackers under my desk. "I know. He's welcome too. I know a place with excellent hot chocolate." I wanted to say yes. Every lonely part of me wanted to say yes. But trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. "I can't," I said softly. "I'm sorry." He nodded, no hurt in his eyes. "If you change your mind, the offer stands. No expiration date." Graduation day arrived like a miracle I'd conjured through sheer will. I walked across that stage holding Eli, who wore a tiny cap someone had made him. The audience laughed when he grabbed my diploma and tried to eat it. "Mama did it," I whispered to him. "We did it." The job offers started immediately. Firms that had seen my senior project wanted my perspective. I chose a small company focused on community development, run by a woman who brought her rescue dogs to work and understood when I needed to leave early for Eli's checkups. "You're going places," she said my first day. "Both of you." I looked at Eli, finger painting at the office's kids' corner, and believed her. We were going places. Together, one building block at a time. He stood on my doorstep at 8:47 on a Thursday evening, wearing jeans and a rain-soaked jacket, looking nothing like the CEO I'd glimpsed at Pike Place. "Hello, Mira." I gripped the door frame, grateful Eli was at his weekly sleepover with Sarah's kids. "How did you find us?" "Private investigator. Took him 3 days." David's voice was flat, controlled. 6 years, and it took him 3 days. "You need to leave. I need to understand." His composure cracked slightly. "He's mine, isn't he, Eli?" I said nothing. Legal advice from the support group echoed in my head. Don't confirm. Don't deny. Don't give them ammunition. Christ, Mira, he looks exactly like my baby pictures. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I thought you were too busy with Jennifer to care. He flinched. We never. After you left, I couldn't even look at her. Fired her within a month. How noble. Don't. He ran a hand through his wet hair. Just, can I come in? Please? 5 minutes? Every instinct screamed no. But the neighbors were starting to peek through curtains, and I didn't need that gossip at Eli's school. I stepped aside. He entered carefully, like the apartment might bite. His eyes swept the space, Eli's artwork covering the walls, toys in organized chaos, the life we'd built without him. Why? He asked finally. Why didn't you tell me? I poured myself water, needing something to do with my hands. Do you remember what you said about your family's lawyers? About what you'd do if someone tried to keep your children from you? I was drunk, angry about Marcus's situation. Were you lying? He was quiet too long. Answer enough. I couldn't risk it, I continued. Couldn't chance you deciding you wanted him, then changing your mind. Couldn't let your mother turn him into another Carter acquisition. He's my son. He's my son. The words came out sharp enough to cut. I grew him, birthed him, sat up with him through fevers and nightmares and teething, changed thousands of diapers, taught him to walk, to talk, to be kind. You contributed DNA. I contributed everything else. David sank onto my secondhand couch. I would have helped. With what? Money? Lawyers? Threats? With being his father. Like you were a husband? Silence stretched between us, filled with 6 years of absence. I've changed, he said finally. Good for you. I'm in therapy, have been for years, working through everything, my family, the pressure, the way I treated you. I said nothing. I left the company, he continued. Started my own firm, smaller, focused on sustainable tech. No more corporate politics, no more family expectations. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know who I am now, who I'd be for him. He looked up at me. I'm not asking for custody. I'm not threatening lawyers. I'm asking for a chance to know my son. He doesn't know you exist. I know. He's happy. I can see that. The apartment, the artwork. You've done an incredible job. Don't patronize me. I'm not. I mean it. He stood, walked to the wall of Eli's drawings, stopped at one labeled My Family, stick figures of me and him and Mrs. Chen from downstairs, who babysat sometimes. He seems loved. He is. Does he ask? About his father? Sometimes. I tell him his father couldn't be with us, that it's not his fault, that he's perfect exactly as he is. David's shoulders shook slightly. I want to meet him. No. Mira, you don't get to waltz in after 6 years and claim rights you abandoned. I didn't know, because I protected him. We were both breathing hard, years of anger finally given voice. Protected him from what? David asked quietly. From me. Do you really think I'm that terrible? I think you were capable of being that terrible. And I couldn't risk my son finding out. He absorbed that like a physical blow. What if I prove I've changed? What if I respect your boundaries, follow your rules? This isn't a negotiation. Everything's a negotiation. You taught me that. He moved toward the door. I'm staying at the Marriott downtown, room 412. I'll be there for a week. If you change your mind, if you decide he deserves to know where he came from, call me. David, I won't push, won't get lawyers involved. This is your choice. But Mira? He paused at the door. He's going to ask harder questions as he gets older. What will you tell him then? After he left, I sat in Eli's room, surrounded by the life we'd built. His bookshelf overflowing, his drawings of dinosaurs and spaceships, his baseball glove still too big for his hand. Everything I'd done had been to protect him. But protection and isolation weren't the same thing, were they? I picked up my phone, then put it down, picked it up again. Sometimes the hardest choice isn't between right and wrong. Sometimes it's between two different kinds of right, two different kinds of wrong. Outside, rain continued to fall, washing the city clean for tomorrow's possibilities. We met at the zoo. Neutral ground, public space, easy exits. I'd told Eli we were meeting an old friend of mine, nothing more. David waited by the elephant enclosure, hands shoved in his pockets. He'd dressed down, jeans, sneakers, mariner's cap. Trying not to look threatening, probably. It might have worked if I couldn't see the tension in his shoulders. Eli, I said, my hand protective on his shoulder. This is David. David, this is Eli. Hi, Eli said, more interested in the elephants than the stranger. Did you know elephants can paint with their trunks? I didn't know that, David managed, his voice rough. That's pretty cool. I watched David's face as he took in his son up close. The way Eli's forehead crinkled when he concentrated. Pure Carter genetics. The stubborn cowlick that no amount of water could tame. His father's eyes in a 6-year-old's face. Want to see the penguins? David asked. I heard they just had babies. Eli looked at me for permission. I nodded, and we began the strangest afternoon of my life. David was careful. So careful. He didn't push. Didn't try to buy Eli's affection with gifts or promises. He just listened. Asked about school, favorite subjects, what books he liked. When Eli launched into a detailed explanation of his current dinosaur obsession, David paid attention like he was hearing state secrets. You know a lot about dinosaurs, David said. Mom got me books from the library. We go every Tuesday. Eli grabbed my hand automatically, including me. Sometimes Mr. Daniel comes too. He knows about buildings and dinosaurs. I felt David stiffen beside me. Mr. Daniel? My professor, I said quietly. Friend. He tutors Eli sometimes. Ah, we watched the sea lions show in awkward silence. Eli cheered at every trick, unaware of the tension between the adults. When he ran to the fence for a closer look, David spoke. You're seeing someone? That's not your business. You're right, sorry. He paused. He's good with Eli? He's a friend, but yes, he's wonderful with Eli. Good, that's good. The day continued in fits and starts. Comfortable moments when Eli's enthusiasm bridged the gap, followed by silences heavy with unspoken history. At the playground, Eli climbed the jungle gym while we sat on a bench, not quite together, but not apart. He's incredible, David said. Smart, kind, curious about everything. He's a good kid. That's your doing. Don't. Don't what? Give you credit? You raised him alone, Mira, worked multiple jobs, got your degree, built a career. You're amazing. I did what I had to do. No, you did more than that. He watched Eli navigate the monkey bars. I've been thinking about what I missed. First words, first steps, teaching him to ride a bike. He can't ride a bike yet. We live in an apartment. Would you let me teach him? The hope in his voice nearly broke me. David, Mom, watch this? Eli called, then attempted something gravity-defying on the climbing structure. Careful, baby. He landed safely, grinning. I'm not a baby. You'll always be my baby, I called back. Even when I'm old like you? David chuckled. Old? Your mom's not old. She's 28, Eli informed him seriously. That's almost 30. Ancient, David agreed, earning an eye roll from me but a giggle from Eli. As afternoon faded, Eli's energy finally flagged. He leaned against me at the picnic table, eyes drooping despite his insistence he wasn't tired. We should go, I said. Can David come for ice cream? Eli asked sleepily. I hesitated. David held his breath. Not today, sweetheart. Okay. Eli accepted this with childhood ease. Bye, David. Thanks for showing me the baby penguins. You're welcome. Thanks for teaching me about dinosaurs. In the parking lot, I buckled Eli into his booster seat. He was asleep before I closed the door. When I turned, David stood there, eyes suspiciously bright. Thank you, he said. This doesn't mean... I know what it doesn't mean, but thank you anyway. I drove home with Eli sleeping in the back, my mind churning. At a red light, I glanced in the mirror. Even in sleep, his face carried that serious expression, like he was solving problems in his dreams. That night, after bath and stories and our usual bedtime ritual, Eli asked, Is David lonely? Why do you think that? He looked sad when we left, like when Mrs. Chen's cat died. Sometimes adults are sad, baby. It's not your job to fix it. But we could be friends, right? If he's your friend? I smoothed his hair. Maybe. We'll see. Mom? Yeah? Do I look like anyone? My heart stopped. What do you mean? Sarah's mom says she has her grandma's nose. Tommy has his dad's ears. Who do I look like? You look like yourself? I said carefully. Unique and perfect. But before that? Before that, you looked like a grumpy raisin. All babies do. He giggled, question forgotten for now. But I lay awake long after, knowing harder questions were coming. David was right about that much. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number, though I knew who it was. Thank you for today. He's everything I hoped he'd be. I'll wait to hear from you, however long it takes. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. The invitation arrived on thick cardstock that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. The Architectural Excellence Awards, black tie, Seattle's finest, would attend to celebrate innovative design and community development. I was nominated for the Riverside Shelter Project, transitional housing that had opened 6 months ago. My baby, my proof that broken things could be rebuilt into something useful. You have to go, Sarah insisted, holding up the invitation like evidence. This is huge, Mira. I don't do galas. You do now. She was already scrolling through rental dress websites. Patricia's watching all the kids. No excuses. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of my mirror wearing a borrowed navy dress that made me look like someone who belonged in rooms with champagne fountains. Eli sat on my bed, playing with my rejected shoes. You look pretty, Mom. Thanks, baby. Is David coming? I paused, lipstick halfway to my mouth. We'd had a handful of supervised visits over the past months. Park meetups, library trips, careful, boundaried interactions that Eli accepted without question. I don't think so. Oh, he lined up the shoes by height. He'd probably think you look pretty too. Kids, no filter, all truth. The gala was everything I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, air kisses, people who called homelessness the housing situation. I nursed the same glass of champagne for an hour, smiling at donors who wanted to hear how grateful the shelter residents were. Beautiful project, a woman gushed. So nice that you're giving back after your own experiences. I'd learned not to hide my past. Owning it gave me power here, made my designs authentic in ways the trust fund architects couldn't match. Mira Thompson? I turned to find Daniel Reeves in an ill-fitting tux, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. Daniel, what are you doing here? My firm donated to the shelter. Figured I should see where the money went. He smiled. You look like I'm wearing my friend's dress and shoes that are killing me. I was going to say remarkable, but that too. We found a quiet corner, away from the networking frenzy. He asked about Eli, about work, about everything except why I'd pulled away after graduation. Patient, as always. I saw David Carter earlier, he mentioned casually. Near the bar. My stomach dropped. He's here? His company was a major donor, apparently. He left when he saw you arrive. I scanned the room automatically, but Daniel was right. No sign of him. Mira. Daniel's voice was gentle. I know it's complicated, whatever your history, but you don't have to face these things alone anymore. Before I could respond, they called my name. The Riverside Shelter had won the Innovation Award. I walked to the podium on unsteady legs, accepted the crystal trophy that would become Eli's favorite toy. The speech I'd prepared evaporated. Instead, I found myself speaking from the heart. This shelter exists because I needed one once. Because a woman named Margaret saw a terrified pregnant girl and offered shelter without judgment. Because sometimes the difference between surviving and thriving is just one person saying, you belong here. I talked about the women who'd tested our prototypes, insisted on dignity over charity. About my son, who drew dinosaurs on my blueprints and reminded me that safe spaces needed joy, not just walls. We don't build for statistics. We build for stories. For the mother who needs to remember she's more than her circumstances. For the child who deserves beauty regardless of their zip code. For the human being behind every housing crisis headline. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it. In the back of the room, I spotted him. David, standing by the exit, watching. He raised his glass slightly, a salute, then slipped out. After the ceremony, after the congratulations and business cards pressed into my hands, I found myself on the terrace overlooking Elliott Bay. The same water I'd stared at 6 years ago, planning my escape. Congratulations, David's voice came from behind me. You earned that. I didn't turn. Thank you. Eli wasn't exaggerating. You do look beautiful. Don't. Right. Sorry. He moved to stand beside me, careful distance between us. I watched the whole ceremony. Your speech. God, Mira. You became everything you dreamed of. I became everything I needed to be. That's what I meant. We stood in silence, watching fairy lights cross the dark water. He asked about you, I said finally. Whether you were coming tonight. What did you tell him? The truth. That I didn't know. Very diplomatic. David. I turned to face him. What do you want from this? Really? I want to know my son. To be whatever part of his life you'll allow. To make up for... You can't make up for it. That time is gone. I know. He calls you David. He'll probably always call you David. I know that too. I will never trust you completely. Never forget what happened. Never be the girl who drew house plans at our kitchen table. I wouldn't want you to be. That girl deserved better than what I gave her. His voice was rough. This woman, the one who built shelters and raises an incredible kid and wins awards, she doesn't need anything from me. No, I agreed, she doesn't. But maybe Eli does. I thought about my son's questions, getting harder every day. About the space in his life shaped like missing history. About what I owed him versus what I owed myself. Tuesday afternoons, I said finally. After school, parks, library, public spaces. You can have 2 hours. Thank you. I'm not doing it for you. I know. I left him on the terrace, collected my award, drove home to where Patricia was watching Disney movies with Eli. My son launched himself at me, all sleepy warmth and unconditional love. Did you win? Yeah, baby, I won. Can I see the trophy? I handed him the crystal piece, watched him turn it in the light. It's like a big diamond. It's better, I told him. It's proof that broken things can become beautiful. He didn't understand. Not really. But someday he would. Someday I'd tell him the whole story. How I'd left one life and built another. How love sometimes meant letting go. How strength looked like starting over with nothing but hope. But not tonight. Tonight, I held my son and my award and my hard-won peace. Tomorrow would bring what it brought. Tuesday would bring David and whatever relationship they'd build in those careful hours. I wasn't the woman David had left. Wasn't the girl who'd run. I was Mira Thompson, architect, mother, survivor. I'd built a life with my own hands, and it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.